I really like that perspective around growth marketing because it's so important
Yeah.
and something that really every company needs and is trying to figure out. And the tools have been democratized and are more accessible. And that's also kind of created its own competitive loops as well. As the tools have gotten better and it's been easier to do, it's easier to do growth marketing, harder to do strategy, and still tons of
Yeah.
strategic level, but the mechanics of go-to-market have become easier with the new platforms, which is like, again, creating these kind of competitive cycles. But in terms of our stack, we think it's still early days in sort of dependable agentic workflow, augmenting roles, and especially early days for the mid-cap. The biggest companies in the world have found enterprise solutions. There's been a lot of deployment there. I think there's been less deployment in the mid-cap companies from 50 to that 150 million in revenue. And there's more about at this point figuring out what to deploy and when dependably rather than what exact agentic workflow you're using, and it's changing quickly.
Welcome to Becoming Radical, the podcast for creators, builders, and dreamers just like you. What does it mean to become radical in a world of constant change? Hosted by Michael Gaizutis, each week we'll explore the real-time journeys of those rewriting the rules. From untold failures to groundbreaking success. If you're ready to break the boundaries of limited thinking, this is your guide to unlimited growth.
Welcome to Becoming Radical. We are joined again today with Rolan Reichel, who's the co-founder of Moic. Rolan, it's great to have you here. I'm so glad we got a chance to do this.
Thanks, Michael. Happy to be here as well. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Absolutely. So, your background as, from what I understand, as a seasoned entrepreneur, digital strategist over 20 years in tech, marketing, and media. It's impressive to say the least. You come from a lot of spaces and places. Would love to talk to you a little bit about Moic specifically as a great starting point to our conversation. What inspired you to launch Moic? And, what problem at the time were you really trying to solve?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I had a public markets exit back in 2017, and which was great, modest public markets exit. It's everything's sort of in my LinkedIn profile, but it gave me the opportunity to reflect a little bit. And it was a real important juncture, realizing kind of where AI was coming. And this is right in artificial intelligence, moving from beating Go players in 2016, right, to the launch of OpenAI just a few years ago, right in the middle of that. And what I saw was that this was going to be a dramatic impact on business, especially in my business lane around marketing. So started playing with the technology. And then, like most great things in life, Michael, it started with a phone call. My phone rang, and it was a friend of mine who I've known for many years who works at a private equity firm. And he said, "Hey, I'm one of the operating partners, just left. Let's have you in to meet the team." I live in the Bay Area, so I went down to their offices in the Valley in Palo Alto. And we had a great conversation. They said, look, we've got a bunch of companies that we've invested in, and they typically need some folks to have a high level of domain expertise. And I said, okay, that sounds interesting. And the next day they emailed me and said, "We have an emergency, a dumpster fire. Can you get on an airplane?" And I did. I got on that airplane and spent 4 months turning a company around. And I've been involved in the private equity space ever since. And really Moic is, and I'll kind of land it here. The thing about Moic is it's the ability to bring this artificial intelligence to specifically private equity firms, deploy out across the portfolio companies. And I think it's going to be massively interesting in this private investment space, how AI is deployed, how it affects the companies they buy, how long they hold those companies, and what they sell them for. In each of those important categories, AI is going to have a massive effect.
It's really interesting. Yeah, no, that's an amazing rundown of where you've been and where you are. How do you think Moic differs from everything else out there in the space right now? What is the radical differentiator, if you will, or the thing that's going to push it forward with the rise of AI and the adoption of AI in this vertical specifically?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things about private capital is it tends to be conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And, they've got a lot riding on these companies. They're expensive. They're big bets. You pay 80, 100, 150
Yeah.
million for a company, and it's an asset that ultimately, and I should mention, we focus really in the mid cap there. So these assets are typically worth between 400 to $1.5 billion. So it's a very expensive asset.
Yeah.
Our thesis has been a vertical SaaS application that we, it's easy to say and everyone understands like AI is disrupting everything, but the application of AI into these companies at the investment rigor that's needed. That's our differentiator. We're not just deploying AI, but we're actually doing it in a way that's got the right business mapping, the right business process, and the right deployment at the company to make it successful, measurable, and demonstrable. And then that playbook can be repeated across their other companies. So that's our differentiator. It's really how we put this platform and playbook together for the PE firms.
It's interesting. It really is. And, to me, it sounds a lot like everything else we see. There's a lot of marketing fluff. There's a lot of noise out there, not often a lot of signal that's bringing the right attention to the right channels that can actually work to change and challenge industries. And it sounds like you're really doing that, which is really cool. What do you think is, I like to always ask, what do you think is broken in the current industry? And how are you working to solve for that? I know you touched on that a little bit, but where you're at right now, looking at all your past experience, looking at what you've seen, bird's eye view, if somebody's tuning in, what does that look like right now?
Are you talking about the AI industry or marketing or private equity?
I would say that, the convergence of AI meets private equity, but let's just say private equity. Let's say private equity as a whole and what they are or not doing with AI to help fundamentally improve things.
Yeah, the thing about the private equity space is you've got a lot of really brilliant people there, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Incredibly talented, incredibly capable, and incredibly driven and hard work. I think that the way I kind of understand the old playbook versus the new playbook, and maybe I'll frame it that way because it'll help with this view. So the old playbook that I believe is being disrupted, and I'm hearing and seeing it be disrupted, is a lot of upfront time with the deal team, right? And so we're really analyzing the company and the management and the category and the sector, and like, is the sector growing? And is this company beating that, sector? And is this the right management team? And what, so a lot of work up front to evaluate the company. And then once they buy the company, there's a value creation plan that goes in. And that's typically about trimming the sales and cost savings, and then riding if you've made the right decision in the right vertical, you're going to ride that CAGR up and sell at the right time, having trimmed the sales and made the company very profitable. What's happened though is really two major things. One is there's just a lot more competition out there for the companies. There's a lot more competition within sectors. Cost of capital has gone up. And so that's really put a lot of downward pressure on private equity firms during this hold period. So all of a sudden, that playbook of trim the sales and ride the CAGR up is much more difficult than it was years ago. And so now they're like putting on their work gloves and getting into the company a lot more into areas like marketing, into areas like growth hacking, into areas they had previously left to the management teams, because they're like, look, we got to get that whole time down, and we got to grow this company a heck of a lot faster than before.
Exactly.
So those changing dynamics have really opened the door, I think, for AI and for companies like Moic.
It's fascinating. And we see that a lot. On the other side of my life, we run a global digital agency. We work with a lot of, portfolio companies with association tracked back to private equity and the venture side. And what's really interesting is that, just as you said, the growth enablement that they're trying to push forward to hit those bigger targets has shifted, right? So what we used to see, the old playbook, if you will, still works, but they're really trying to hit major market velocity, and especially in the world of AI, right? They want to just take it to a whole nother level. It's really, really interesting stuff. When we think about the technology piece to Moic, I like to talk a little bit about this, because there are things that we're using today, things that maybe you can disclose, things maybe you can't, But thinking about AI and the tech stack behind Moic, what does that look like? How is that enabling you operations, growth in market to really transform this industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I really like that perspective around growth marketing because it's so important
Yeah.
and something that really every company needs and is trying to figure out. And the tools have been democratized and are more accessible. And that's also kind of created its own competitive loops as well, ironically. As the tools have gotten better and it's been easier to do, it's easier to do growth marketing, harder to do strategy, and still tons of
Yeah.
strategic level, but the mechanics of go to market have become easier with the new platforms, which is like, again, creating these kind of competitive cycles. But,
Yes.
in terms of our stack, we think it's still early days
Hmm.
in sort of dependable agentic workflows, augmenting roles, and especially early days for the mid cap. The biggest companies in the world have found enterprise solutions. There's been a lot of deployment there. I think there's been a
Yeah.
lot less deployment in the mid cap companies from 50 to that 150 million in revenue, and therefore there's more about at this point figuring out what to deploy and when and dependably rather than what exact agentic workflow you're using, because that's going to
Right.
and is changing quickly.
Yeah.
We're like a Swiss Army, toolkit in many ways, right? Like we can build our own agentic workflows directly with like Claude and P server. We've deployed third-party tools. We're pretty deep in the Microsoft ecosystem using
Okay.
their
Yeah.
Power Platform, which is a process mining platform, and then building agentic workflows out of there. So we're pretty deep in those two ecosystems. What's
Cool.
nice about the Microsoft ecosystem for a lot of the mid cap companies, it's where a lot of their data is.
Yeah.
It's in Outlook, it's in Power BI platforms. So we're really, pulling that data together and then building workflows that they need. We've done some third-party implementation as well, but our value layer is in that is in our AI that we've built for ourselves to better map these companies and get the right deployment plan in place. We think the actual deployment of agentic and the use of those technologies will shift pretty quickly over the next 3 to 6 months. So we've stayed really agile in that part.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I could see that. It sounds like, you know, as you're deep into that ecosystem, let's say the Microsoft ecosystem, there's so much you can do there because they're already there and you're leaning into that. So there's a lot of value in that. It makes total sense. How big are partnerships for you guys? Are you opening up partnership tracks and channels to really fuel the growth of Moic in industry? What does that look like, in your trajectory moving forward? I don't often talk about this a lot, but partnerships are big. They can be really vital for the success of growing startups, businesses, brands. So just love to get your take on it.
I think it's an important topic to bring up. And I think it's something that, it's classic biz dev, right? Like, and maybe that's a lost art nowadays. I don't know.
Yeah.
In my career, I did a lot of enterprise and biz dev sales.
Yeah.
Companies like Microsoft and Disney. So, we definitely have that gear here at Moic. The short answer is partnerships are incredibly important to us. We have a kind of a half a dozen companies that we're either in talks with or already doing partnerships with.
Cool.
I'll just give you a couple examples. We've been hosting events at SAP. Which has been great. We've hosted events at Microsoft. We did one about 2 months ago in the auditorium down in the Valley.
It's great.
BlackRock and Blackstone, Crosslake Technologies, which is a really great, smart company of many operated by a lot of PE experts.
Yeah.
Mid-cap strategy for PE firms and their portfolio companies. So they're really on the strategic side. We're on the AI implementation side. So that's an important partnership. So we very much see ourselves as part of this private equity ecosystem, whether it be, again, BlackRock or Blackstone or Crosslake Technologies. And it's been a great way to provide tons of value very quickly.
That makes sense. There's an old school of thought, your network is your net worth, right? So I'm assuming that runs deep, right? So when we think about the opportunities to cultivate partnerships, to grow new new biz dev opportunities, from within to scale beyond what we already know could be viable as an option for growth. Are you leaning into your network pretty heavily? Are you expanding your network, to really grow Moog specifically?
I think that's right. Having been a part of a public markets roll up myself, have raised, tens of millions of dollars in that capacity, having been involved in startups. Absolutely. Network has been great. And, to reach out. And the other thing I'll say about that actually is, it, when you kind of touch the world of PE, you realize how big it is. Kind of hear about it like, oh, PE, it's massive, $6 trillion globally invested. But then when you start talking to folks and other companies, you realize that it's a really massive and important business ecosystem.
Absolutely. 100%. If somebody were getting into this today, they're tuning in, they're like, I want to get into industry. I want to get into the PE space and the convergence of AI. And I want to be complementary to what Moog is building. I don't want to be a competitor directly, but I want to be complementary. I want to really thrive in this space. What would be some tips and tricks just foundationally that you could advise them to look at, looking at this from day one, or maybe they're seasoned in some other industry and they're getting into this now?
I think, continue to build your knowledge of artificial intelligence and the business applications of it is really important. There's such a fire hose of information right now. I mean, one of the things at Moog, and we did this really just for our own edification and kind of fun, is we had to build out a database of just traditional and AI marketing tools.
Oh, wow.
We built a database of them. We put them all in there, and then we built some AI to go scrape the web and enrich all the different companies in there. We have 4,500 marketing companies in this database. Then we threw a chat interface on top, so you could go in and ask a question like, "Hey, what's a good email marketing program?" So I would say for anyone, start building, start tinkering. I don't know how you do your weekends, maybe go for a run, maybe you go play some tennis. But when you get back on that Saturday afternoon, get into your office, open up your laptop, because, we built that application in a weekend. We did off the shelf tools. And we did it for, literally 10 hours and, $20 in subscriptions. Yeah. So those kinds of things. And I think the more you get hands-on and kind of build and experiment in that way, the business opportunities will become apparent from there.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. Great wisdom and advice there for somebody tuning in. How do you personally think about scale without sacrificing quality at scale? It's a big question, loaded question.
It is a loaded question, and there's tremendous pressure on scale. Like, I don't know how many folks listening to this are startup founders, but you cannot. In fact, there's a whole if you're any Reddit fans out there who love subreddits, and I'm one, it's my guilty pleasure, actually. There's a whole channel kind of dedicated, the meme channel dedicated to this, where every day we're seeing these posts like, "Oh, I built a $2 million company in 5 minutes with." And so there's this meme channel dedicated to kind of making fun of that. But I think the truth of it, though, and the heart of it, and why it's funny, is because we are hearing these stories of massive scale companies that are achieving 10, 20, 50, $100 million in ARR in all but 18 months. Like, I've never seen that in my career, right? You always have enterprise. And now, 2 million in ARR in the first year is kind of the gold standard for new AI startups. So, the goalposts have been moved. They're moving quickly and in real time. And I think the only way to operate in an environment like that is just stay radically focused on your business. And just build the best product you can and kind of let the market take you. If you got to build a great product, that's everything. So
be product first, be experience driven, 100%. And I think that's key, and it's instrumental. There's a lot of, across industries looking at the world of AI, but just in tech, in totality, in tech, just in general. If you think about the word, and I talked about this earlier in another show, the acronym MVP, it's been overused and overused and overused. Everybody wants to get to market quickly, especially in AI. Everybody wants to move to market very fast. Nothing wrong with that. But I think your point on being product driven is what will separate everybody from the rest. That is the signal versus the noise. That's what's built to last and built to evolve versus the opposite. You can move to market quickly. If product is great, it will stick and stay. But if it's not, it will likely slide down the hill. So it's might fall short. So it's really interesting. We talked about scale. We talked about quality. How do you personally balance your focus operationally with, creativity as a part of this too? So we're thinking about, okay, we have strategy, we have efficiencies with operations, but I want to be creative. I want to bring really cool ideas to market, ideas that are, worth their weight, that I can take action on and, show the results behind the model by which I brought it to market.
That's a great question. It's an interesting framework. It's not often that people ask me about creativity. Especially in business, right? And working operating in this private equity space, which is very hard-nosed, number-driven, data-driven.
Yes.
And I tend to think that way as well.
Of course.
Creativity is important. I think you have to. So one of the things that I do, and I think many folks do this, but I really stick to it, is that 3 times a week I block out 2 hours of my day.
That's great.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 to 1. There's no meetings. I put my phone in focus mode. I don't answer my email, and I use it for just deep work.
Amazing.
And it's a time to just kind of get into some research. And I really don't put a lot of pressure on myself during the hours. There's plenty of pressure on all of us in the rest of the hours.
That's right. Yeah.
So if I feel like reading a couple articles in The Economist, listening to a podcast like yours, or maybe I spend some time thinking about a thought piece or a perspective that I want to share, or, Michael, maybe I spend some time looking at innovative companies like yours, or answering some, inbounds, and really just having that space to take in information from the world in a non-stressed, non-rushed way.
Yes.
I think is really important. So that's what I do. And it's for me.
I love it. And I think it's important, you need that great escape built in that allows you to be creative, because in the moments where you can take yourself away and, shut everything down, it's when the best ideas come to surface. And then you can start to really think about how are they going to become meaningful in market, right? But without that step away from it, especially with high stress, nonstop action, it's hard. I think it doesn't need to be a forced thing. It just needs to be something that flows. But just like currency, meaning flow, the same happens with creativity. You need that chance to be in flow. So, and it can be in any industry, even in private equity. I think the key is just stepping away, just like you're talking about. So it's great.
Just to follow up on that, I think a lot of folks I'm a big fan of this idea of like a hidden talent. Well, I generally believe humans are just incredibly talented, right?
Yeah.
We look at some of the things, juggling. There's just no reason for juggling to exist.
Yeah.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah.
So, all these incredible talents. And I always ask about that when I meet someone. And I'm thinking one partner in particular who the other day I found out that they were like a classical guitarist.
Wow.
Right. And so you would have never known that about them, but that's their thing. They do.
Wow.
Some folks play tennis, but I find that a lot of people who've had a lot of success in business tend to have some hidden talent. And if you ask about it, it's fun. It's a fun discovery, and they're always happy to share about it because it's like their true passion in life.
It's their thing that keeps them grounded. It's their thing that they're not chasing necessarily for monetary success, but they're doing out of love and out of passion. That's interesting. It's really cool. What trends do you see happening? I mean, trends are an interesting word, but what do you see happening in the space of AI, private equity, that could be coming, maybe is quietly becoming the next big thing? And that could be MOIC and what you're doing, but it could be something else outside of it that you're paying attention to.
Yeah, I think that, the way the industry of private equity, I think, is going to be disrupted. And I think there's waves of disruption happening across different industries and kind of different time frames. I think marketing is the first industries to be disrupted and to be dramatically disruptive in terms of creative services and kind of incorporation of AI into their models, and anyone doing kind of strategy or any agency work has really embraced this. So I think that's one of the first industries. The more traditional kind of B2B businesses are probably further down the road, but coming.
Mhm.
I think we're in like slow, kind of undulating, disruptive pattern right now. I think you're gonna see. So that's what I see happening in business. But what I think is also interesting is the adoption of AI in our personal workflows. So
Yeah.
maybe a breakout hardware device. I think there's been a couple things that almost made it. There was like this one product that was like a
Mhm.
flare you put on you carried it
Oh,
with you.
yeah. I remember that.
Right?
Yeah. Fizzled out. It was cool.
It doesn't really work, right? So,
Yeah.
just like, glasses, Google Glass,
Mhm.
I work now. Meta's kind of cracking that market. So
Mhm.
I think the next big thing is there's gonna be a device like that
Yeah.
I think will be breakout and
Yeah.
has the potential to be
Yeah.
as big as the iPhone.
That's interesting. It's fascinating because, obviously Meta wants their product, their hardware to be the thing that sticks. Um, to be determined, we'll see. Because, what's interesting, so interesting from what I've learned and I've seen just running an agency and working with all different types of brands and being on the consumer tech side as well for many years prior. Uh, I think when consumers want to adopt something, when there's enough reason, enough value, enough oomph in the market, so they can have that velocity to adopt whatever it is that we're talking about, hardware, let's say in this case, then it can do really well. But you're right. I think it's time for a shift. I think it's time for something else to be adopted in that space. And it'll be interesting to see what does actually happen and who actually brings it to market. And usually it is going to be one of these bigger players because ordinarily they have such a large, percentage of market share already, right? They already have cornered, like Apple had already cornered part of that market before the iPhone came in, right?
Yeah.
They were already a leader, more of a legacy brand. And Meta the same, they had that opportunity. So it'll be interesting to see what happens for sure. If we track it back to Moic, one of the last questions I have for you, where would you like to be in the next 3 to 5 years? Here's our North Star. Here's what we're chasing. Where would you like to be in the next 3 to 5 years with Moic? What does that look like for you? What kind of success are you chasing right now?
I think we have a really unique opportunity to be a market leader in this space.
Yep.
We would like the number one recognized brand, company, trusted brand for AI deployment with private equity firms. Yep. We want to be that first option for them as they think about building for their portfolio companies, as they think about, how AI is going to disrupt their business. I think that's number one for us. From there, it's really about scaling the business. I mean, there's 25,000 mid-cap PE firms in the country. So we want to get to a point where we're serving 10 to 15% of the market. So that's about 4,000 enterprise customers, which, would put us into that market leader position and just build a great company. Like I'm a big fan of internal culture, where we have a company where every voice is heard, everyone gets a seat at the table. We like to have fun. We swear constantly. We really have a flat organization. So every meeting, people can speak their mind and bring the best ideas forward. So if we can achieve that market position, achieve that market share, and build a fun, great company culture along the way, like I'll be super happy.
I love it. Such a great answer. It's been a joy to have you here. We've learned a lot. We've paid attention. We've thought about what's happening with Moic, but also what's happening in industry. And you brought some great perspectives. Where can everybody find you? If they want to partner, if they want to learn about you, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So LinkedIn, just ping me there. I have a commitment to answer every message that comes in. So I really try and, make myself available so ping me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, go to our website. It's www.moic.co. That's MOIC.co. Leave us a message there, pop your email in there, and we'll get back to you. But yeah, please feel free to reach out. Happy to chat more about private equity, AI, or what's happening in the industry.
Amazing. Well, this has been an incredible conversation. We'll be cheering you on. We'd welcome you back on the show anytime to track your growth, success, velocity, and market. Really excited for what you're building here. And Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch soon.
Sounds great, Michael. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Becoming Radical. If today's episode sparked something in you, follow wherever you listen, join the conversation, and share it with someone ready to think beyond limits. Be unlimited, be bold, and become radical. See you next time.
Game over.